and then sometimes we just kind of don't have a choice to listen to it. If things were really good, maybe I wouldn't have taken that big leap, but I think I was kind of searching for something, and I I needed something, and I felt this kind of longing or something like that. And like that, the man in the desert told me, this is something you've been wanting for a long time. And I was trying and kind of failing, or at least it wasn't happening yet. And then I just went for it because I felt like the alternative of not going for it was like I couldn't deal with that. I had to go for it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fathers, Sons, Brothers podcast. It's Gareth, and I'm super jazzed that you have stopped by today to spend some time with us and to listen to this episode. I recently got connected via Instagram to somebody called Justin Dale, and he was a guy who I saw moving and shaking in the men's workspace, specifically around helping men's coaches to make $5,000 a month from their coaching business. And I think it's such an important and beautiful cause. You know, on this show, we've been talking quite a lot about the growth of men's work and the importance of what men's work means, this ancient technology of men's work, coming back and becoming more commonplace with more and more men's work brands and coaches and institutions coming together to create sacred spaces for men to come together to, we call it, do the work and be able to heal together. I know one of the reasons that men's work is so important to me was I didn't trust men before. There was a part of me that always felt like I was in competition with my brothers, whether it was around women or around resources or around business or money. Even if it wasn't direct competition, there was a part of me linked to my own wounding. I can own this part, which was, the sense of like, I'm not enough and I'm continually in comparison to people around me. And without having a safe space to have authentic conversations, to be able to be like, somebody else is battling with the same thing that I'm battling with. You know what? It's not just me. There's so much that does to me inside to realize that the struggle that I'm holding, I'm not alone with. That men's work has been probably one of the most powerful healing tools that I've had on my journey. And I'm really excited that men's work is coming back into the collective as an idea, meaning men's work is today where meditation was 20 years ago, meaning every Silicon Valley CEO that is level-headed, grounded, calm in his body and thinking clearly probably has a meditation practice and understands the importance of that. Not yet does every single CEO that wants to integrate every part of his leadership arsenal, every part of himself, connect to a sacred space like a men's circle to be able to receive the reflection and the support of a tribe of men that he loves and trusts that is not in the space of work in competition where we're in the boardroom playing for the game of like limited resources, like to step away from that and to have a space to be able to come together and receive reflection so that you can go back to your world as an integrated, grounded leader is why we're so excited about men's work. And so to connect with somebody like Justin, who's doing an amazing job of supporting men's coaches with what they need to empower them to support other men and get paid to do it, is really, really important work. It's the same reason that we've created, and you'll hear in this podcast, our Ignition program. After 10 years of building the Fathers, Sons, Brothers brand, this podcast, a thriving online community with a paid membership, various high-ticket offers that we run throughout the year, we have built the playbook and the team and the three important elements that anybody that wants to take their purpose work, their coaching business or their guiding business to be able to support humanity to wake up and move in a right direction by sharing your authentic voice, your unique story. I want to share my playbook with you. I want you to have the opportunity not to have to guess how to do this, not to have to think about who is this for, how to cut through some of the challenges of a crowded online marketplace to find the people that are ready to be part of your particular tribe. The Ignition program is why we created that particular playbook. I want to serve more men and women. The Ignition program is for men and women, but to help them on their path as a coach or a healer or a guide to be able to find their voice, to step out imperfectly into the world and to start sharing and getting paid to do it. This is the way that we help one another really heal all of the stuff that we collectively want to heal together. And so the path of being a coach let me tell you, is as much a healing path for me as it is for the people that I work with. The same in men's work, that saying, my work is your work, meaning when I step into a men's circle and I share what's alive for me in this moment, and it doesn't always look pretty, somebody else in the circle is resonating with a theme or a time in their life where they felt something similar. And it's like, I feel better because I got to share it. The other brothers in the circle feel better because they got to feel it and they're not alone in their struggles. And we have medicine for one another inside these spaces. So my conversation with Justin today was super epic. We ranged through a whole range of exciting topics. We spoke about the importance of challenges in your life. And we also share a way of thinking that supports you to reframe whatever clusterfuck you have happening in your life right now. And trust me, it feels like right now on the planet, all of us are managing some degree of clusterfuckery in our lives just to keep shit together. The world is in a state of change and a state of flux. And all of us are going through these seas of change. And although we may be at different levels in our journey, we're all in the same sea. And our aim is to continue to connect and support one another to navigate whatever it is that we're holding in our lives at the moment. And so Justin and I share this framework that we both went through a very similar experience of having a real all fall down, or like life just fucks you over completely, and how that shifted us onto a really important new power timeline where we reclaimed our power, went on a new timeline, and how you can do the same. But that it's important to recognize that these signs come along and that you can miss them if you're not looking out for them. You can fall back asleep or go back into your old way of being, even though life is sending you all of the messages that you need to put you onto a new timeline. How do you develop the courage to step into that next thing, to be the lover or the husband or the father that you want to be or the leader that you want to be, is an important place to be able to see and be aware of these signs of transformation. Justin's an amazing dude. We had such a powerful conversation. We spoke about climate change and virtue signaling. We spoke about men's work. We spoke about supernatural experiences, was how Justin described his experience in a Temescal with his amazingly sounding spiritual connected father, and just how that affected his upbringing, and some really powerful stories around that. I also got to share some of the thinking that I've had recently around men's work and the importance of men's work, and this theme that we've been talking about, which is men's work becoming a thing. Like, this is going to be what meditation is in the world right now. And so, for those that are still new to this, our King Circle that we hold once a month is a really powerful way for you to check this out. It's a free gathering. It's the last Sunday of every single month. And it's a space for men to be able to come together and to create this new paradigm of leadership called an integrated leader. And this integrated leader is the leader that recognizes that just because we were born into this slightly fucked up society that we live in, we're going to have some wounds of not enough, of not good enough, abandonment wounds, of competition, and that's okay. Our work in this lifetime is to recognize those parts of ourselves and to bring them back in and to integrate those parts into ourselves so that we can show up as a confident, comfortable leader in our organizations, in our families, and in our own lives. It's impossible to do this if you don't have a space of men that you love and trust, reflecting the parts of your experience that you can't see. I'll say that again. You have blind spots in your experience, in your decision making, in how you see the world, and how your money game shows up, and how your relationships show up, and how the world unfolds around you. This is created by your belief system. And some of those beliefs are there to support you and are good and solid, but some of those beliefs might be old, maybe outdated, limiting beliefs that you've inherited, perhaps from a caretaker or a parent at a young age, or a strategy that you developed to help you navigate the world that was good for a while but might be keeping you stuck. If you're trying to fix that thing, let's say you want to call in more financial flow into your life, you want more money, but you've got a limiting belief that perhaps money is the root of all evil. These competing beliefs that you have in your life, a desire for more money and a belief that money is evil, will keep you stuck, never being able to manifest and accept more money, until you go to a space where people can show you what it is that you want to call into your life by reflecting the parts of your life that you can't see. That's what happens inside a King Circle, along with so much more. So details for the King Circle will be below this video. And now, without further ado, jump into this amazing, wide-ranging conversation that I had with Justin Dale. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Fathers, Sons, Brothers podcast. I'm stoked today to be hanging out with Justin Dale, who is a neighbor geographically to me, based in Mexico, where I'm in Guatemala. Brother, thanks for taking the time to hang out on the Fathers, Sons, Brothers podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
How did you end up in Mexico? You're not from Mexico. Where are you originally from?
I'm from Canada, and I actually have a good story about that. We could
Tell
jump
it.
straight into a anecdote from my
Do
life.
it.
Why not? So I'm just trying to think of how far back. Basically, I went to a retreat, like a kind of a men's retreat, and that kind of inspired me. Was a big part of what inspired me to do the work I do now. But anyway, I'm at this retreat in the desert in California, and um, this guy's doing a speech to a group of men, and then he asks for a volunteer, and so I put up my hand, and and then he gets out his massage table, and he gets me to sit on there, and he does like quantum energy healing or theta. I forget what he calls it, and he immediately goes, "So how would you feel if something ever happened to your mother's health?" And like a few days before that, she had called me up and said, "Hey, I just went to a doctor. I've got really bad news." And thank God it turned out to be like not as bad as it could have been. Like at the time, I was like, "Oh my God, she might pass away in 2 months." And I'm like, who is this guy? Why is he asking me that? And so then I did a one on one with him later that day, and he said, the most important thing in your life is to be able to travel the world and take your work with you. And this is something that you've wanted for a very long time. And it was so true. I'd been trying different online businesses. So I've got a background in like web designing and e-commerce and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying, like I was working in the corporate world, and I was trying some side hustles and wasn't really working yet. And so then I went back to Montreal where I was living. I arrive at I think it was like 3 in the morning. Realize I've lost my keys, and it's like wintertime, so it's like super cold out. Then so I go to the McDonald's, and I wait there till like 8 in the morning until the
Fuck.
somebody from the building can let me in. And I remember there's like other people like chilling there at McDonald's, and I was like, wow, this is how people live. But for me, this is like brutal. And so then the owner of the building lets me into my apartment. So I quickly changed that. I go into the office where I worked, like this little e-commerce company, and they're like, "Oh, did you get the email?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "Well, we love you, but your position's being terminated." And then I took the metro home, and I lost my iPhone on the way home. And then I just got in my head, and I think this is a gift of mine. Maybe I'm like, I'm just going to sell all my stuff and buy a one-way ticket to Mexico. And I'd never been to Mexico. I hadn't really done very much traveling at that point in my life. I kind of started late, and I did it. So I put all my stuff on for sale on like Craigslist or something, and then I remember like all these people coming over to my apartment all the time and walking away with all my prized possessions. It was the first time in my life where I finally had this like sweet apartment with all the toys I'd ever wanted, and I bought furniture specifically for to fit the nooks and crannies. And but I was depressed. I was like unhappy, and then finally I got to the point where I was like, wow, I'm ready to go. I sold my big iMac and bought a little laptop, and I just booked a one way ticket. I had no idea how I was going to make money, and I just went for it, and it worked out beautifully. And so
So good.
that was like February of 2018.
Okay. And so where did you land in Mexico?
So I booked a room in a house on Airbnb for 1 month, starting March 1st, and then I flew to Cancun. And because I was like getting doing all the preparations, and then I realized, wow, I'm all ready to go. And it was like 2 days before March 1st. It was like February 26th. And so I just booked a ticket, and I went 2 days early. So then I spent the first 2 nights in Cancun, and then I already had an Airbnb lined up in Playa del Carmen, which is an hour drive south. And I remember being scared to go out. I was like, not sure if it was safe to leave the house I was in, because I booked another Airbnb in Cancun, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'll just go out in the day, but not at night. And then I asked my host, like, so how do I get to the beach? And he's like, oh, you just walk down here and then hop on a bus and you go to the hotel zone. It's super easy. And so I'm walking, and then there's no bus stops here, which is actually great because you could just wave wherever you want and they'll pick you up.
Right.
Free for all, a bus every like 30 seconds. Whereas if in Canada, if you miss your bus, you're standing there for 15 minutes freezing till the next one.
And it doesn't stop unless you're standing in the bus stop.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And so I'm like trying to figure out like where are the bus stops, and then this bus stops for a red light, and and the doors open. I'm looking at it. I'm like, I just got on it for some reason, thinking that, like, I don't know. Oh man, that must be it or something. And it took me to this big shopping mall with like there's like 100 buses and they were all honking. And I was trying to figure it out, and I couldn't. I had no idea. I didn't speak a word of Spanish, and then I just ended up taking a taxi back to my Airbnb. I didn't even make it to the beach, and then
Uh-huh.
my guest was like, "Oh, I'll take you." And I was like, "Well, it's getting dark. Are you sure it's okay?" And now, like, I feel more safe here than I do in Canada. But at the time, it's like, "Yeah, yeah, let's just go down to the beach." And I'll never forget that moment when I sunk my toes into the white sand of the beach in Cancun. I was like, wow, I made it. Like this whole process of selling all my stuff, getting myself here, like here I am. This is incredible. And it was the first time I'd ever been on like a tropical beach. Before that, the only beaches I'd ever been to were like the coasts of Canada, which are like beautiful in their own right, but it's not like sand. The water's kind of too cold to go in, and I'll never forget that moment. That was like incredible, and the best thing I ever did, really.
¿Y ahora
Yeah,
cómo va su español?
esté bien, esté bien.
Sí.
Poco a poco estoy aprendiendo. Sí, sí,
Very good,
claro.
brother. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah,
You know
yeah. I
that
love it.
that story just reminds me of like this thing also working with men and my own personal journey. Faces and places are different, but the experience is similar. Like life is just calling you to do something else. You know,
Yeah,
McDonald's, lose your keys, lose your job. Like something in your life is like pulling you into a new direction and giving you all of these signs. And yeah, I just want to honor the courage that it takes to listen to those, because there are a lot of people that just choose to fucking buy a new iPhone and get back into their apartments and carry on and not actually hear the call of what happens, you know. But I see that as like these, you know, life or your soul or God or something calling you to do something different other than what's been on offer or that you have been doing. And I think there's this real place of waking up to another reality that looks different to the reality that we lived in. And often that has to do with physically moving yourself away from the place where you grew up with, meaning friends and stories and routines and actual physical locations where this is who I am as Justin Dale or Gareth Pickering in my story in South Africa, that required me landing on the beach in the Philippines and being the same thing. I'm like looking around in awe and wonder, caught my first surf wave that day, and I was like, could this be how I live? Like, is this even a thing? You know, and then just realizing, like, oh fuck. Yeah, there's a real sense of like, thank God I fucking made the decision. Thank God I went through all this pain. So, dude, my story is exactly the same. I just bought a new sofa,
wow.
and despite not wanting to move out of my life, and all of my world seemed to be collapsing around me, including me falling into addiction and yeah, just like not harmful patterns to myself of places where I was just choosing things because I was very uncomfortable being with myself. But I stayed stuck for a long time. I didn't make that decision in an instant. It took me a good few years to be like, this really does suck. And I really had to hit a bottom point before I did the same thing, which, yeah, required me leaving my world in South Africa and then heading out and going traveling. And then, yeah, a few years later, settling in Guatemala
Nice.
again. But yeah, just this real
Yeah,
sense of what life could look like if you give yourself permission to think of something different other than what we know.
yeah, yeah. So cool. And I kind of feel like, in some ways, maybe I'm a bit of an outlier in my willingness to kind of throw myself into the unknown in some ways, but not really. Like, I feel
I
totally
think we all have
normal.
it. I think all of
Yeah.
us, and I think specifically men, have this deep sense of like being called to do something remarkable. It includes adventure, it includes some danger and the unknown. That's the nature of what I think this human experience is. And
Hmm.
I think many don't have the courage to do it, or just don't want to listen to it, or numb that voice by being on social media, or working extra hours, or starting a new business, or cannabis, alcohol. Choose the distraction that you want. But many, I think we all do have it. I think the outliers are the ones that
Absolutely.
listen to it and follow it. I think that voice is there for many
Yeah.
of us. Eh?
Yeah, you put it better. That's what I kind of was trying to say, was that sometimes people don't listen to it, and then sometimes we just kind of don't have a choice to listen to it. It's kind of like, it sounds like maybe you and I were in, like, if things were if things were really good, maybe I wouldn't have taken that big leap, but I think I was kind of searching for something, and I I needed something, and I felt this kind of longing, or something like that. And like that, the man in the desert told me, this is something you've been wanting for a long time. And I was trying and kind of failing, or at least it wasn't happening yet. And then I just went for it because I felt like the alternative of not going for it was like, I couldn't deal with that. I had to go for it, And then I also, I guess I feel like I kind of believe in this idea, and the way I articulate it is kind of like the higher self, which exists beyond time and space, and it's got a bird's eye view of things, and it can kind of see the future a little bit. And if we listen, then we kind of know, we know the way. And even though it might be crazy to book a one-way ticket to another country and not know how you're going to make a living, and you don't have much savings, maybe we know that that is the way, and that it is going to work out, and that's the way to go. And it's not reckless or irresponsible. It's actually tuned in, because I've fallen on my ass a lot in my life, but not from big leaps of faith. It's more from, I don't know, just generally, but
Mhm.
the big leaps of faith tend to work out.
Brother, I've got this thing with I use in my own life, but I also work with clients with, which is it might be hard, but it's not complicated. Meaning that intuition that you speak of, that we have an internal compass inside us that when we're listening, which means not distracting yourself, not numbing yourself out with drugs of choice, etc. When you genuinely sit with yourself, you do know the right decision. You know that this is not what I want to
Hmm.
be doing, or this is not the relationship for me, or this is not where I want to live. Like those decisions might be difficult to make, but it's not complicated. It's not like, oh, is this the right choice for me? When you really tune in and listen and you trust that part of yourself, call it your higher self, call it your relationship with the divine, or just your intuition, you can call it whatever you like. You do know. You do know. And when I can look back on my own
Yeah,
journey and be like, I did know I was unhappy. I just didn't give myself enough time to really tune in and listen. I just fucking put it to the side and drank a whole lot of alcohol and distracted myself from myself. It doesn't
yeah,
mean that making the choice is not difficult. That it is difficult because you've got to let go of all of those things. You've got to let that part of yourself die. You've got to sell a business, end a relationship, have a health crisis, whatever those things are. Those are not easy, but it's not complicated. If you just tune in and
right.
listen, that inner voice is there.
Yeah. The complication is just, we add that. It's like mental chatter. Should I
Mm-hmm.
do it? Should I not do it? What if this happens? What if that happens? Well, what if blah 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 blah. But yeah, the essence of it is very simple.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hey, FSB crew, a quick message to say 97% of you who watch or consume this podcast are not subscribed. Subscribing to the show really supports us to be able to grow and reach more people, as well as include and improve the quality and caliber of guests that we have on this show. Our goal is to get this number down to 70%. And so if you have ever received any value from the content and conversations on this podcast, please consider subscribing. It really supports us and the work that we're doing. Now, back to the show. Brother,
Yeah.
we're called the Father, Sons, Brothers podcast, and I'd love you to share another story about the roles that you've played in your life as either a father or not a father, as a son. You shared some stuff around your mom, or as a brother. Like what comes up for you in those three sort of masculine labels of being a man in this world? Something you want to share to let our audience get to know a little bit about you?
Oh man, that's a great question, and well, I shared this anecdote the other day, but this is a whole new conversation, and it's up. I had a supernatural experience once when I was spending time with my father, and that this is the first thing that came to mind. Is so I think some of my interest in kind of my alternative worldview that's maybe not so alternative anymore. It's kind of been the silent majority, but comes from my father, who was a Waldorf teacher, and it participates in Aboriginal spirituality since kind of the '90s, and he used to read me and my brothers, what do they call it? Aesop's fables, mythology.
Yeah.
So I remember hearing a lot of mythology, Greek mythology, stuff like that when I was a child. And he used to quote Rudolf Steiner when I was a child. He doesn't seem to talk about that much anymore. But when I was a kid, I remember hearing about that stuff. And so about 10 years ago, so like I'm not around Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, where I grew up that much, unfortunately. That's one of the bad things about living overseas and stuff like that, is I don't get to be around my family that much. But about 10 years ago, I was doing a sweat lodge with my dad. He's involved with the Blackfoot people, and he'll go down to Montana in the summers and do sun dances where he'll actually pierce his skin with like bone. It's like, and they
Fascinating.
don't eat or drink water for I think 3 days straight, which is pretty hardcore. Like the no water part, that's like really
Amazing.
hardcore. And one time I was doing a sweat with him and his friends, and his friend's father came, and I was told that he's a guest of honor. He's a high kind of, how do you put it? A recognized high status person in their community. And I was told he was bringing a spirit helper with him. And so we're in the sweat lodge, and I'm just listening, the sort of thing you'd expect to hear at this kind of event. And we close the door, and it's pitch black, and it's very low to the ground. So we're just sitting, kind of crouching, and the drums are going, and the shakers, and chanting. There's maybe six people in there, and I'm hearing this super loud flapping sound, and like moving all around my head. I'm worried that it's going to hit my head, and I'm like, I think I'm feeling wind, and it's like so loud, like and then
Yeah.
afterwards, I asked them like, "What was that? What was that loud flapping sound?" And they go, "Oh, that was his name George? Maybe that was George's spirit helper. That was his eagle spirit helper."
Mm.
And I'll never forget that moment, because that was like, I believe that there's a lot more out there. Like I'm open minded, but I was like, "Oh my god, I just had like a supernatural experience." Like that was
So beautiful.
so. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, bro, I've noticed something, I think, in the world that I grew up in, which is like a sort of a pretty traditional conservative Western world. We don't create a lot of space for realms other than what we can see and touch with our 3D senses. And
Yeah.
I was brought up in a Christian home, but I didn't really resonate with the Christianity framework of exactly how it unfolded. So, what gave me some peace when I was sort of in my late teens and up until my early 30s was like, I'm just going to be an atheist. That's fucking easier for me because I don't want to be this guy. I don't know anything else. I can't touch anything else. And I was just a part of me that was like comfortable in my choice to not know anything. it's not an easy way to live because then nothing really makes sense. You know, you're just like, when I die, the lights go out and that's the end of it, then I might as well just be completely hedonistic. And in many ways, I pretty much was. I was just choosing myself every single time. The world around me consisted of the things that I could touch and feel. And the more that I could acquire and the more options that it gave me in my life through money and through choices, that was my opportunity. But only when I went traveling and, you know, maybe slowed down and again removed myself from that world, did I realize that the whole world of spirituality, my lesson came through specifically around manifestation, like understanding that I understood how I'd set goals and they came into my life, but I didn't realize just the level of ease at which things can manifest when you, inverted commas, not play with this stuff, but realize what it is and live in alignment with these laws. These laws are not stuff we
Mhm.
taught in school, but like the law of vibration, the law of attraction, these types of spiritual laws exist in this reality, but we don't talk about them or teach them. If anybody's listening to this going like, ignore them at your peril. It's like you just don't, if you choose not to believe them, that's cool. I chose not to believe them. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't give you access to any of the healing or the power or the magic or the connection to things that exist outside of our spiritual material, sorry, our scientific materialism that I lived in a world. And so, you know, if you can't prove it on a spreadsheet or with science, then it simply doesn't exist. And I've proven that to be untrue time and time and time again in my life. You know, continual visions, psychedelic experiences, transcendental experiences, dreamlike states, dreaming itself, like all of these things exist. You can't prove dreams, you know, what happens there with things. But like I've had dreams where I fell asleep. One example that just comes up now, I fell asleep and I dreamt in my dream that I'd lost my credit card. And I was like, oh, I woke up thinking I must be more careful with my credit card. I got back into the rental car where I had been parked in the sun, and my credit card had completely melted in the car. And I'd
Wow.
forgotten that I'd left it in the car. And it's like, what the fuck happened there? My logical brain
Yeah.
is like, that didn't make sense. And I didn't even
Yeah.
know, I thought my card was with me, but like the dream space and reality and time as we think we know it, if we choose to see it completely linearly and think that this is all we have, when I lived like that, I cut myself off from a lot of power and opportunities to make my life easier, both from a position of connection, feeling connected to something bigger, my ability
Mhm.
to be able to bring things into my life or transform my life in a way when you're connected to the more subtle realms as a way to be able to, yeah, just be connected to this power and realize that I now understand that I'm a vibrational being, and what shows up in my reality is very much a function of my vibration, the point of vibration that I hold. And I've noticed that
Mhm.
to be true in my life. When I look back on it, when I was anxious, not feeling myself, maybe distracting myself from myself, my outer world reflected that back to me. My relationships were chaos, business always seemed to be in a big rush, I was hustling, etc. As I've slowed down, found a bit more peace in my own life, maybe it's just a natural maturing, I've noticed I'm attracting more laid back relationships, a more ease and flow with my business and money. That's not proven by science. That's proven by the fact that
Right.
I live in a specific way, and the vibrational world in which we live is bringing those
Yes.
experiences to me. You can choose to ignore them and you can still stay stressed and write your plans out on a thing and you could still make $1 million. I made $1 million just by writing a vision board item and putting it out into the world, and then went surfing in the Philippines, that same story that I started with. And
Mhm.
a 50 grand investment that I made in Bitcoin became $1 million within 18 months. And I was like, oh my God, what the fuck just happened? Like I had a
Amazing.
little like opportunity to play with the universe using law of attraction. And I just made this image and I completely forgot about it. And suddenly I was like, wow, I made more in 18 months traveling the world, having fun, than I did in 10 years building my business, hustling as hard as can be. And I left there with 50 grand. That was the 50 grand that I had for my life that became a million. And I was like,
Mhm.
whoa,
Oh,
that was
that's
my
awesome.
moment of like, make
That's
sure
so
that you
cool.
listen to this stuff. Because if you don't, you're going to
Oh,
fucking
yeah.
hustle and you think that's the way the world needs to be. And then, yeah,
Yeah.
the role of stories that we tell also influences all of these pieces. So, yeah, brother, thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah. And right when you were right before you shared that experience of the dream and then the melted card, I was just thinking I was listening to you and it triggered a thought. So just I guess a week or two ago, I woke up. I don't remember my dreams that much, but I woke up one morning and I was remembering my dream that I was just, or I was sort of having a dream, but waking up and kind of aware of it. And it was kind of like me phoning my mom and being like, "Hey, good news! I'm making lots of money," and or like something big happened in like my financial realm of my world or whatever. And then like a couple hours later, I signed up a one-on-one client, and it was like a little precognition or something that it was
Mm-hmm.
it was happening. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's all absolutely. There's just, and like that experience I shared with the
The eagle.
the eagle. It's kind of um, I just take it to be like, okay, so if that's real, what, or I take it to be real, like then what else is real? Like maybe all this other stuff is the magic, the manifestation, the potential for immortality, the chakras, the third eye, the levitation, the whatever, telepathy, like what, maybe it's all real. I've had moments thinking like maybe it, maybe they hide everything out in the open and they put it in fiction like Star Wars, and then people go, "Oh, that's a good movie. That's fiction." Where in reality, that's all real, and that's part of the mental prison that we're in to limit our awareness of the true possibilities.
Bro,
Yeah,
you and I could riff about this for ages because I feel like that's what it is.
yeah,
I think in many ways we are living a story that has been handed to us that in some ways is linked to some level of scarcity or dark energy, which is we're all going to play this game. Let's call it money, and this is the most important thing that we need to do, and it's the most important thing in the world. This was the story that I sort of had. It's like whatever you do, you're working towards making more and more money, and this is the path of what you want to do. But in some ways it does disconnect us from a certain number of things because we suddenly have a worldview that, okay, if I had more money, then I would be happier. And if I got sick and I had money, I could pay for it to be. And if I didn't have food, I could have money and pay for it. It's like all coming back to the single place, which is we already live in an abundant world. If you walk outside in nature,
yeah,
we would be okay to survive just by sitting on the beach most days, getting some sun, being with family, making love, being in our bodies, moving our bodies, growing a little bit of food, and that's pretty much all we need. That's like
yeah,
about it. You might want to go on an adventure or two, but we've created this super complicated world, which in many ways has become a prison that sounds like I need to keep doing this because of money. And yeah, I think it really does keep us stuck from our true potential of recognizing, firstly, not only how little we need to live, like we've created these worlds of unnecessary expenses, including the materialism trap of like filling our homes with stuff, which in many places or cases we don't need as much as we have, and we continue to buy more of it, only to put it in a landfill a few days later. That's a sickness. That's not a way to
hmm,
live. That's like so, yeah, I think there's something in that which is it can only come from giving yourself the permission to explore these other realms or these other ways of living or other possibilities, which is like, yeah, we have so much magic. And I think one of the pieces for me, which I'm keen to start having more and more conversations about and actually want to create some content about it, is that our healing journey is nature's perfect. We didn't make these
yeah,
unbelievable meat suits and live for millions of years to get to this stage only to realize we need to take pills and little yellow bottles to make us feel better. That's a lot of bullshit. And I think that is like a compounding problem that actually doesn't make us better. I think what makes us better is slowing down, getting the nervous system into a place where the body can relax and heal by itself. But in order to do that, you need to make sure that you're not answering 300 emails a day and spending 50 hours a week in Zoom calls and meetings with people around the money conversation or stress because
hmm,
your animal body doesn't feel relaxed in that state. And then eventually you will start to get sick. And the solution there is to slow down and to go back to the way that you are supposed to live, not to take another injection or eat another pill or to, even the doctors don't even prescribe, nutrition as a solution. What are
yeah.
we
They have
actually
no
putting into our
idea.
body? Like just take a stock take of what we've eaten today. Is it been three
Yeah,
cans of Coca-Cola filled with sugar, or like just small stuff? And so I think what
yeah,
you're touching on there is really powerful. And I think what's exciting for me is that I think we're going through a great awakening. I think there's a lot of
Oh,
people that are waking up
absolutely.
going like, this is a lot of bullshit. I don't want to do this forever. It doesn't mean you throw all of
Absolutely.
it away, but it's like you can do a stock take of your life and be like, okay, I've got so many years left on this planet and have a guess. That could be anything from the next 30 seconds to the next 30 years or longer. None of us think we're going to die today. But what's not a fuck yes in my life that I could actually let go of? And that's a
Hmm.
really good place to start, because that just gives you the spaciousness to be like, okay, here's a relationship that doesn't make me feel good. Here's a
Yeah.
choice or a location that doesn't make me feel amazing. And just slowly start to let go of that and create a little bit more space. And I think that is the process of us coming back into some sort of realization of what really makes us happy.
Yeah, I love that, like talking about kind of minimalism and going down to the essentials of what we really need. Like we don't need much, and then at the same time recognizing the abundant nature of nature. And like, so I've got this little garden. I've got kind of a little uh, backyard garden, and I
Mm-hmm.
moved to where I'm living now. I moved here about 4 months ago, and there was this plant that was maybe I don't know, 4 feet or something like that,
Uh-huh.
and now it's enormous. It's like 20 feet, and I'm gonna have to, I feel like I have to ask somebody, like, is this thing a tree or is it a weed or what is it? Like, is it gonna be bothering the neighbor? Should I cut it down? Like, how big is this gonna get? It's
uh-huh.
enormous. It's like the size of a tree now, but it looks like a bush or
Uh-huh.
like a plant. It's not a tree. It's like soft and floppy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just absolutely gargantuan. And it just goes to show how um, the sunlight and the water and the way it all works, with the wind and the currents of the water in the ocean, and the way that the energy all circulates through the planet. It's designed to create incredible abundance. Like, it's built into the system.
It's so
So,
beautiful,
and
bro.
that's
It's like, yeah, so I was going to say there's like this sense for me that I have no doubt that nature's going to be fine. You know, we
oh
might not be
yeah.
here to enjoy it. Like, we might get to a place where we make this planet uninhabitable for humanity and we'll die.
Hmm.
And I have no doubt in
Hmm.
10 or 20 years, nature will be fucking thriving again without us here. You know,
Yeah,
nature will set us free. Either we choose to live in harmony with her and come back into what you're saying, which is recognizing that if we just sit back and slow down, we have enough of what we need. Nature is perfect in its design, and we're part of nature. But if we choose to not be part of nature and continually, chop down all the trees to, turn them into dollars because that's more important, or eat all the fish because that's more important than actually replenishing it, we'll still be set free. We just won't be here to enjoy nature. She'll go back to the way she has done for billions of years. We'll
I
just
think
be a little
so.
blip on the timeline. So yeah, I
Yeah.
do feel a lot of peace in that. Like, yes, we might be killing the world. No, we're killing the world as we see it right now. In the timescales of things, we just as a species may not be here anymore, and other civilizations, a lot more noble and a lot more exciting, have existed and disappeared before us in this short time window that
Yeah.
we've been on the planet. Eh?
Yeah, I see it like that as well. At the same time, though, the like the which deserts am I thinking of? There's desert regions of the planet that were like these lush jungles thousands of years ago, and then I've heard, I don't know much about this, but I've heard like some people say that Mars used to be very ecologically rich, and now it's kind of a desert. So I'm not sure what that's about. Maybe in the big timeline beyond human comprehension, that's a cyclical thing, that the lush jungle comes back once again later, or maybe that in that desert, that's rich in consciousness in a way that we don't perceive
Mm-hmm.
as well. It is maybe we're designed, we only can see, oh, there's plants and animals and water, so there's a lot going on. And then if it's desert, oh, there's nothing here, but maybe we just don't notice it. Who knows? It's all a mystery.
Hmm.
But yeah, but
Yeah, man.
I kind of I believe I agree with you. Like I think nature is going to be okay. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think what's more important is that we remember that we're part of nature. Because as soon as we
Hmm.
feel separate from nature, and I know that this is true for me because there's a time in my life where I wasn't so interested in it, that it's like, yeah, I didn't really care. My focus was on money and my business and my next range of things. And so I was making choices in my life around what I chose to consume and where I chose to spend my time and what I was even building. My advertising agency was around something
Oh,
that didn't
okay.
feel like it was supportive of nature and this planet in a way that was anyway healing. And, I've had this
Hmm.
more recent analogy of these three rings, where the first center ring is self love. Like, how much do I love myself? The more that I'm able to love myself, then I think I can expand out a little bit and love the relationships around me, my partner, my family, my community, etc. Like, if that self love's not there, it's quite hard to have relationships with other people. I think the third love on the outside of that is like sort of a cosmic or universal love, which is, if you can't love yourself, it's going to be really hard for you to walk out into the world and love nature and the rocks and the trees and the things that seem inanimate. And so,
Yeah.
everyone, not everyone, I notice some people are out there going like, we need to save the world. Fuck everybody else that's doing it. And it's like, it's not coming from a place of self love, it's coming from fear. And so I
Yes.
think we do have a responsibility to this green and blue ball that we're on, this fucking magnificent place that we are. But it's going to be solved through love, not through like shaming people or, I think
Yeah.
there's a healthy place to go to the street for sure, lobby against bad practices for sure. But I don't think we're going to solve the world unless we love ourselves. I think it really starts inside and radiates out. And so these three rings are sort of dependent on my ability to fall more and more in love with myself every single day, because I notice the more I do that, suddenly I'm like, good God, it's so beautiful. It is so amazing
Mm.
to be out in the world. And I've actually, do you know who Jamie Wheel is from the Flow Genome Project?
I don't think I'm familiar.
Anyway, he has this saying, which is actually an E.B. White quote, which is, some days I wake up wondering whether I should be saving the world or savoring the world. And it's
Nice.
this paradox that you wake up with in the world of like, fuck, I need to save this place, we're fucking killing our mother or something like that. And I've been sitting with this and I realized, and I think the end of the quote is, you need to savor the world first, otherwise there's nothing worth saving. And I think that
Yes.
I noticed that people have this tendency to want to save the world, but I don't notice them taking the time to savor the world. Meaning,
Oh, that's so
like,
true.
if you're going out there saying we need to save the planet, blah 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 blah, and then you don't go and spend time in nature and fall deeply in love with her, to me that's a virtue signal. That's like coming from a place of wounding
Yes.
and a fear and a program that maybe it's not your fault, but if you don't go out into nature and actually love the thing that you're trying so hard to save, I'm calling bullshit on that. I'm like, you need to go and sit in
Wow.
nature, be part of it. And then, yes, from there, we can talk about saving the planet. But if you're just out there shaming everybody for it, talking climate control, worst case scenarios, we're all going to die, but then you're not actually savoring the part that you're trying to save, to me, it's a virtue
Hmm.
signal. And I'm like, I'm calling bullshit
Oh,
on
that is
anybody that's like
so
that.
true. I never thought of it like that, but that is wow. That's profound. I because now that you pointed out, that's exactly what it is, and like there's these people that are very aggressively talking about these issues about like we're all going to die because humanity's killing the planet and it's mostly these people's fault and I'm one of the good people and
Uh-huh.
I'm spreading the word, but I just spend all day on my smartphone.
Yes, exactly.
I've barely left my house in months,
Yep.
let alone go to the park, let alone
Yep.
outside of the city to get into the nature. And maybe throughout human history, like because I think that kind of our the way we think as an individual, there's so much behind it that's gone into it, and maybe throughout the last kind of 10,000 years, being an industrious person, where like the people that figured out how to extract resources from nature and and kind of harness the labor of others were the ones like the Rockefellers, or before that, I'm sure there was big, like during the agricultural revolution, there was probably kind of big strong men that got other people working for them, and so maybe it maybe like extracting resources from the environment and kind of the powerful people of society. There's always been that connection, even though nowadays, like people, there's the tech billionaires, and there's many ways to become influential and powerful and wealthy. But I think there's still that relationship between extracting like lumber and oil and all this stuff, and these people are trying to kind of tear down the the, the hierarchy or the powerful, and they're like anti strength, anti beauty, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think being supposedly pro environment is a very convenient cover for them to like be aggressive.
I always ask if that's, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's always coming back to that place of those three rings. Like, is this person deeply in love with themselves? You know, because if you're out there
Mm-hmm.
trying to rah, 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 it's like most things that I can see in my own life are, where am I making this decision out of love or fear? There's this almost binary choice in every single moment with what I choose to do. And my nervous system
Mm-hmm.
lets me know. So, you know, like, am I feeling like I've made this decision from a place of love? Or am I contracted because I'm like fearful that I'm going to run out of money, or that I need to do this business deal because I have to get the deal done or something like that? That's more from a place of fear than from a place of love.
Yeah.
And the climate change piece is the same. It's like, am I savoring it, or am I just from a place of fear trying to tear down the existing structures? And you know, I do get that, because again, this programming that we touched on at the beginning, this mind trap. If you want to keep people like fighting against each other, just give them a reason to fight. And there's no bigger reason to make somebody feel really fucking scared than the sense that every choice that you make is killing your mother. That's what it's like. We live on our planet
Mm-hmm.
Earth, Mother Nature. And if we feel that every single time we're doing something, or that somebody out there is doing something, is killing our mother, it's fucking debilitating. You don't know what to do. You can't move in your life. And so you start feeling anxious about it, and you start feeling stressed about it. And yeah, it's not a helpful way to fix it. So yeah,
Yeah.
just recognizing in my own life where I'm making choices from a place of love or a place of fear rather than from a place of love, is just coming back to try and solidify that inner ring, so that I can show up better for my relationships with my family and my community. And then the next thing, I'm walking around like crying because I see palm trees that are so green, and I'm just like fucking overwhelmed with the gratitude of being in this beautiful world that I'm in. Can I make a
Mm-hmm.
difference to save the whales? I don't know. I hope so. Like, but I also don't want to
Mm-hmm.
lie awake at night just beating myself up because of where we are. That doesn't feel helpful at all.
Yeah, totally. Um, I think even people whose ability to love themselves has been shut down largely, still, I think it's human to have a connection to nature. And some people are really, really shut down and have almost lost the ability to love themselves. But everybody has it to some extent, unless they're totally shut off and they have a lot of healing to do. And um, so, yeah, I think that's part of that those issues as well, is that it is human to have that connection with nature, and maybe in a way cultivating self-love and appreciation for nature are kind of one and the same. And I'm really relating to what you're talking about all these little decisions we have throughout our day about, is it coming from love or fear. It's like I can relate to that because living the way I do, being an entrepreneur, being kind of nomadic. Like I've got a home base, but I'm kind of floating around. It's not the most. I don't know. There's variations. There's ebbs and flows, and I just get to a point where I'm over feeling the contractions. Something doesn't go my way. I'm not gonna get depressed or freak out or stressed out. Like it still happens to me to some
Hmm.
degree, but I'm just over that. Like I just want to feel good, even if even if everything's going wrong. And I've had times when everything goes wrong, and
Uh-huh.
I get depressed and stressed out, and I'm over that. It's like even if everything goes completely wrong, I just want to feel happy, and savor the moment,
Yeah.
savor my surroundings. Yeah. And I think that that's when we maintain that, we become attuned to the opportunities, and then we actually everything is a lot more okay than we think it is. Where if somebody is in that fear and contraction, and one little thing goes wrong, and they react to that, and then that sets them on this like chain of events with their thinking, where then they make another situation worse than it was, and then it gets where everything's contracting, and then they yeah. Whereas if we just stay relaxed, happy, little ups and downs, but it's all good, and we just trust that we're in the bigger picture, we're expanding. We're in a state of expansion, even when there are I'm doing this like thing with my I really wasn't on camera. I'm trying to do the expansion contraction, in the there may be little contractions along the way, but we're expanding in the big picture. And I'm just reminding myself I don't need to worry or have a bad day or get upset or something if you know like hopefully, I mean, I know that sometimes life really throws us curveballs, but yeah.
Recognizing, like you said, that it's a choice. You can see it as a curveball, or you can see it as a gift. There's this saying that I've heard before, which is, um, life's rejection is God's redirection. Meaning, what feels like a bad choice or a shitty day or something like that, often when you go back and reflect on those things, those moments in your life, your worst possible night when you had to stay awake in McDonald's, it's like, fuck, this is shitty. The world's happening all against
Yeah,
me. I suck, but whatever that is, the more time you go back and reflect on those and be like, thank God that happened, because now I get to live in Mexico and I've started this whole new path. You can suddenly be like, okay,
exactly.
the next time a shitty day comes along, you're like, okay, I've been here before. Like you said, I'm just going to choose to be happy. Yes, you get taken out of your ease. Yes, you thought you were going to make the money and it didn't, or you got lost or burgled, or, you know, but you come to this place of recognizing that life is actually happening for me, not to me. And when I feel
Hmm.
like life is happening for me, suddenly I'm the creator of my reality, meaning life is
Hmm.
always showing up to support me. And that might look like a breakup, that might look like, feeling sick, it might look like certain things. But instead of being like, oh, I'm sick and going into victim, I'm like, okay, I'm sick. My perfectly attuned body is giving me a signal that I need to slow down or change what I eat or blah, blah, blah. Suddenly I'm like, thank,
Hmm.
thank you. Thank you for the gift to retake stock. Yes, it sucks being sick, but to lie there in victim, like you said, it gets you into that vibration again, which is again fear or love. And I'm in fear that, oh, I could die. What have I done? Blah, blah, blah. You tend to attract
Hmm.
more of that. And that's just the law of attraction, the vibrational frequency that you
Hmm.
hold in that moment. If you choose love, like you said, you have a bad day, but I'm going to choose to be happy anyway, it soon passes, and that happy vibration attracts more of the same sorts of experiences into your life. And suddenly when you realize you can make that choice between fear and love in every moment, everything shifts.
Totally, totally. I exactly. I was even gonna mention like that experience being in McDonald's. It was kind of crappy, obviously, at the time, but I
Yeah.
don't think I would have sold all my stuff and bought the one way ticket if that hadn't all happened.
Hmm.
Um, oh, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so I a few weeks ago I went to an ice bath. It was like a breath work ice bath thing Saturday, and then Sunday was a men's temescal, which is that's for listeners not aware. That's kind of what they call like a sweat lodge here in Mexico, and I don't know, maybe they call that all throughout Latin America, but
Yeah, it's Temescal here as well.
yeah, and I thought that I was like no longer really felt like a victim very much. I remember when I was like a teenager, kind of like complaining and stuff, like feeling like, oh, poor me. And I thought I was over that. But then when I was in the ice, it was super intense, and I feels like my hands are going to fall off or something, and I'm just trying to exhale. And I remember my mind's going, oh, why is it colder for me than for everybody else? This is so unfair.
Interesting.
Ah, like it makes no sense. Like the maybe if they just put more ice into the water right before I got in, or it makes no sense basically. But that's what I was thinking. And then the next day during the temescal, so we're inside the little hut thing, and it's hot, and there's this moment where it got really hot for a moment, and I thought, oh, why is the hot air being blown to me, and it's more relaxed for everybody else, which is it wasn't even like that. And then I was like, oh man, maybe that's like, and I can't say I'm completely free of ever feeling like a victim, like like let's say I lost the use of my legs tomorrow. I would be like, oh, what? Poor me. I would be, to be honest. But I feel like maybe that was like that sense of victim, like leaving me. Like
Hmm.
hopefully the last little bits of it, and as much as possible.
So beautiful,
Yeah.
bro. Yeah, I think I don't think those parts ever go away. I have this way of looking at
Yeah.
my reality through this lens of like an inner kingdom, which is I've got all these voices inside my head. I've got a CEO that's responsible for money and business decisions. I've got a romantic lover who wants to be connecting with women all day long. I've got a king who's in charge of the whole thing. We also have a victim and a prostitute and a judge and a sabotager, and we have all of these different voices. And I think what you're speaking into is that stuff doesn't go away. You just recognize that one person inside you, as a function of your wounding or our cultural story or the world that we've grown up in, has at some point developed a strategy where that was useful for you. You know, to go into
Uh
victim as a
huh.
kid meant that my mom gave me love, for example. So whenever I feel
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable or I need love, I go into victim and somebody shows up and saves me. The victim rescuer polarity, you know? We also have the
Mm-hmm.
ability to be a rescuer. So when you see a lovely lady who's just lost her keys on the street, don't worry, I'll help you and swoop in and save the day. Like you can get
Mm-hmm.
into an unhealthy relationship pattern where you continually feel like you need to show up and save people to make yourself feel good. But the awareness of
Yes.
what you're talking about, I think, is like, okay, there's that voice again. It doesn't mean that's not Justin Dale. That's just my victim who comes up from time to time and thinks that the world is out to fuck us up. Just listen to it, be aware of it, don't get too involved, let it go. What came up for me when you're talking about the super hot temescal was like you've also been there and had a supernatural experience in a temescal, so
Mm-hmm.
there's like the same thing has been a life-changing moment and the worst possible moment of my life, just depending on the story and the experience that you're having.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just
Mm-hmm.
make these stories up all the time. And yeah, beautiful to recognize
Yeah.
that voice inside your experience as it came up in the cold and then again in the sauna. It's unfair
Yeah.
no matter what.
And that's interesting what you're saying about how we have that savior inside of us. Maybe we all have that. Definitely some people feel that more than other people. And I I found that out about myself when I was in Colombia because the poverty is pretty extreme there. And that was at a time in my career where I was in e-commerce and I was making more than enough money, and I wasn't really having to work for it. I was just kind of keeping an eye on things on my phone, maybe sending out an email here and there. And so I kind of felt like it was free money. And I was also kind of playing with, it is consciousness. It is like this idea of just letting it flow. It comes in, it goes out. Whatever I give comes back to me, or so I thought at the time. But now I realize it was really excessive, and I was indulging in this kind of savior thing. Like I got something out of it by like being very generous to people. And like maybe partially because I'm a good person, but that's not the whole that's not the whole thing. I was getting
Mm-hmm.
something out of it as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back, and especially because I went through a period of scarcity after that, I'm thinking, what the hell was I thinking? Like
Mm-hmm.
giving giving so much away, and people were kind of actually like lying to me and stuff, and it was weird.
Mm.
And yeah, we definitely have. I think some people have this much more than others, but this kind of desire to be like a savior
Mm-hmm.
as well as a
Yeah.
victim. Yeah.
So beautiful.
Speaking of traveling, I'm so curious about your story. Are you in San Marcos?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so curious about your story there. And I was there a few years ago, and that's where I first got the idea to do the work that I'm doing now.
Mm.
But what led you to making that your home base?
So I was, yeah, much like you, about 2013, 2014, I went through my crisis of meaning. I think I told you it had been a few years for me to make my decision of like, okay, I want a different life that doesn't suck as much as this. And so I got out of my South African chapter in 2014 and I went traveling. And yeah, much like you, when I first arrived in the Philippines, that was the first time I'd been to a tropical beach before, and I was just blown away by the beauty and the abundance of stuff. And it felt so otherworldly to me. It looked like the cover. There's this DVD series called Lost, and it's just like got all these palm trees and stuff, and palm trees. And I was like, wow, it feels like I'm in the movie scene of Lost. But anyway, the people were so amazing, and I just had all these amazing experiences. And so maybe like you, I went through this process of traveling the world to find myself. And what it started with for me was this: I'd always had like a bucket list of things to do before I die. And this was actually one of the things that made me make this choice. I was looking at my life in 2013. I'm like, I'm putting more things onto this list than I'm ticking off. And I'm seeing that I've only got so many hours in my week to do these. I'll go on a skiing trip once a year, I'll do some travel, but then the rest of the time I'm in Johannesburg building my advertising agency. And it just seemed out of whack. I'm like, these are the things I want to do, and these are the things that I am doing. These don't line up. That didn't feel good. So I left thinking I'm going to come back to South Africa, the normal hero's journey. I'll be back soon. And then
Hmm.
left South Africa. And I'm like, for the next 6 months, I'm going to tick off as many things as I can on my bucket list. I'm just going to do it. And
Okay.
so in that 6 months, I also invest in Bitcoin. Everything changes in my life. I'm having the best time. I'm feeling more in love with myself. I'm connecting with beautiful women. I'm having spiritual experiences. I'm traveling the world. More money's come in the last, you know, 18 months of being out there. Sorry, it hadn't already happened, but I was, funds had started to flow in my world. And that had been one of the reasons that I said no to traveling for so long, because I was like, what about the money? It was such a strong
Yeah.
story for me. And I've seen this with a lot of men as well that I've worked with. It's like, I know I want something else, but what about the money? What about this? What if I burn through my savings? So that was really my opportunity. So I ended up going to like about 40, I've been to 45 different countries. They weren't all in this time, but something about landing in Latin America for the first time. I started in Costa Rica. When I arrived at the airport in Costa Rica, I got off the airplane, and some part of me just went like, oh, like I just felt like my
Hmm.
nervous system relaxed, and I can't describe
Hmm.
it. I now believe that I potentially lived here in another incarnation, maybe in
Oh,
these
cool.
lands or somewhere nearby. But some part of me was like, this is where you want to be. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I spent quite a bit of time in Mexico, time in Costa Rica, and I loved my time in Asia. I went to India, Nepal, Thailand, Philippines, all around Sri Lanka. Did a really beautiful trip there. But I really felt that when I landed in Latin America, there was something about being here for me, which I now, you touched on the chakras, and I just want to share that I think for those who understand it, there's like sort of more light energies, lighter in terms of their density at the top of the system, like your crown chakra is maybe a bit more light in energy than your root chakra, which is in your body, like more around your sex center, where we hold more dense energy, emotions like fear, and more embodied stuff is like in the lower chakras. And I think the world has a chakra system as well, where Asia tends to be more upper chakra. And you notice that where moving through Europe tends to be more sort of in the middle chakras. Central
Yeah.
and Latin America down to South America tends to be more the root chakras, the lower chakras.
Wow.
I've also spent some time understanding my own astrology, and I've got double Taurus in my chart, which tends to be more of these like heavy centered energies in my being. And I know that to be true because I love pleasures of the body, like love making, food, exercise. These are things that I love. I can have an intellectual
Yeah.
conversation. My partner tends to be more upper chakra in her ways and less in the body.
Yeah.
But I think there's something in that. I came to this part of the world and suddenly my body was like, oh, this feels like an energetic resonance to what feels good in my system already. And
Hmm.
so that was what it was like. And I spent some time in Mexico and I thought I was going to live in Mexico in Oaxaca City.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, I came to Guatemala for the second time. I was at a festival on Lake Atitlan for New Year's, and I came back
Oh
to San
yeah.
Marcos for the second time. And something about the nature and my experience, and I was after 6 years of travel, all those different countries I mentioned earlier, I was at the stage maybe where you are now, which is like, okay, let me sign a lease for a while and have a home base. And San Marcos felt like it. And so when I made that decision, I was like, cool, I'm gonna buy a place here. I'm gonna make this my home, and I'll still continue to travel and live my life the way that I am, but this will be my home base. And yeah, bro, within about 3 weeks of making that decision, I met my partner who's been living here for about 10 years longer than me. And yeah, the universe just gave me all of these signs that this is exactly where I needed to be. And so
Amazing.
for the last 6 years, I've been with my partner Araminta. We live in this beautiful home on the lake, and yeah, this is home, bro. I went through the minimalism journey like you. Got rid of all my stuff, just a backpack, one pair of shoes, and a pair of flip flops. That was my jam. And now I'm
Hmm.
back into a place where I've got a home studio and a motorbike and a car and three animals, and yeah, just back into like a
Nice.
slightly different rhythm again. But yeah, we
Yeah.
still travel a lot. We've made the decision not to have kids, and my partner is a transformational retreat space holder, specifically sort of in the Tantra space. So we do
Mm,
similar work, although in different spheres, we overlap a little bit. But yeah, our decision is just to be here and to enjoy the nature and a slow pace of life and yeah, continue to share the magic of what we're both creating with the world.
amazing. Yeah, and it's such a special place. So my so I was talking about like I flew to Cancun, stayed there for 2 nights, came down to Playa del Carmen. I think I spent past lives in Latin America. I don't claim to like have past lives memories or
Me
anything. I
neither,
don't.
yeah.
I kind of tend to lean towards it's real, but who knows? Um, so the guy that I rented the room from for the first month in Playa del Carmen. He's actually the owner of this house that I'm living in now. He doesn't live here. He lives like a few blocks away. We're really good friends. Um, so I remember showing after I booked the place on Airbnb. I showed my mom. I was like, "Mom, you got to see this host of where I'm going to be staying. This buffed guy with long hair on a yacht." And my mom goes, "Oh yeah, well that's a fake photo." And I go, "Oh, true, true. It's probably a fake photo." And so then the time comes to meet up for me to figure out how to go from Cancun to Playa del Carmen, which back then was like a big thing for me. Like just navigating through Latin America was challenging for me. Like figuring
Yeah.
out like, okay, how do I get to the bus? How do I know what bus to get on? Now I can
Hmm.
laugh about it because it's so easy. It's
Uh-huh.
more easy than in Canada because you just kind of give them some cash and off you go. In Canada, they have to, I don't even know what, probably take your credit card and sign you up
And your
for
DNA.
exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm trying. That's what I mean. Scan your retinas um, and so I'm taking the bus to down to Playa, and he's telling me, okay, ask the driver to let you off on the highway, and so I did. I managed to figure it out, and then he pulls up, and I'm like, and there he is. It's the dude from the
The fake
picture. He's
photo.
embodied. Yeah, he's real. He's incredible. He's magnificent. He's like the Latino Fabio or like a young
Ah,
Fabio or something.
cool.
Am I saying that name? You know, like the famous
See,
male
see.
model.
Uh-huh.
And and yeah, we've just been friends ever since. And I've kind of felt like maybe we knew each other in past lives or something like that.
Interesting.
And and with that idea of like being awake to the magic of life, growing up in Canada, where my eccentric dad was kind of sharing these ideas with me and my brothers, they were very different from what the other kids at school were, their reality. And so I wanted to fit in, and like I switched schools when I was young, and I went from being very popular, self-assured, et cetera, into a brand new environment where I didn't really fit in as well. I didn't have high status like I was used to. So I was very concerned about kind of fitting in.
Mm-hmm.
And so then for me to, first I moved to a different part of Canada, this little town called Nelson, British Columbia. It's like a hippie
Yeah, yeah.
place. And then, and that was really cool to be kind of around more people living in the same reality as me, kind of. But then moving to Latin America, it's like the magic of life is just a given. Everywhere we go, all the people around us, they're just living in that reality. At the same time, there is massive poverty and scarcity here, despite their understanding of their kind of like innate recognition of um, interconnectedness and divinity, and everything happens for a reason and stuff like that. At the same time, they're often they do struggle with, you know, being abundant here, but
Mm-hmm.
they live in a beautiful they live I'm sharing that reality with them. And so I've traveled. So I started off in Playa del Carmen, and then I was there for a couple months. Then I went down to Tulum for a month, and then I went down into southern Mexico, Chiapas and Oaxaca, and then up to Baja California, and then up to Los Angeles. And I accidentally discovered Oaxaca City during that time because I was in Puerto Escondido, and
Okay.
then I was going to go meet a friend in Baja California. And I then discovered that I couldn't really fly or take a bus or anything from Puerto
Puerto.
Escondido, Puerto to Baja. It was like I'd have a layover in Los Angeles. It like made no sense. So then I realized, sorry, phone call, I'm constantly being harassed. Um, then I realized I could just take a bus to Oaxaca City and then fly from there, and that was the best way. And then I was like, well, I might as well give myself like an extra day just to check out a new place.
Uh-huh.
And then, to my total surprise, it's such a beautiful, vibrant city. I
That's right,
love it.
eh?
I want to go back there for Day of the Dead one of these years.
That's where I was for Day of the Dead. It's amazing.
Awesome. And then, so I was, I forget, kind of doing my thing. Excuse me. Um, And then at some point, I went down to Guatemala City. I did not Guatemala City, Guatemala, the country. And during that time, I was at a bit of a crossroads with work because the initial thing that I was doing for money when I first moved to Mexico, I was like doing marketing for an e-commerce company, and the tech support guy, we were selling electronics. One guy, his job was to help customers if they phoned in and they didn't know how to set things up. He was starting like a side hustle, him and his cousin. And I was pretty skeptical about their thing, but it was a little bit of extra money. But also, I was at a point where I felt like I wasn't really fitting in with people, and I just kind of wanted to make friends. So I was helping him set up this business, and he's like, "We're going to be making so much money so soon." And I was kind of, I don't know, I'll believe it when I see it. And then like I get to Mexico, and a few weeks later, he's like, "Hey, I've got $1,500 for you. We're making tons of money now. Here's your cut." I was like, "Okay, this is sweet." And so that for the first 6 months, that was how I earned my living. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's different chapters along the way. And then during the pandemic, I got involved in selling medical masks as an e-commerce entrepreneur, and that was crazy. We sold like $6 million of medical masks. But when I went to Guatemala, I was at a crossroads. It was like kind of things were not really working out. I was kind of between projects, and I just thought, okay, I'm going to take a break from work and trying to make something happen, and I'm just going to take a break and see what happens. And I thought that Guatemala was going to be really cheap. Turns out it's more expensive than Mexico. But my thinking was I'm gonna go a little south where it's less developed, less expensive, and I'm just gonna chill out and wait for a sign from the universe or something.
Hmm.
And so I took a bus through down through Belize to Flores in the north, hung out there for a little bit. Beautiful place. Then I went to Samuk Chamay, I think it's called.
Yep. Yep. Samak Champagne.
Yeah, right in the middle with these incredible caves, and down to Antigua, and then out to the lake. And somewhere along the line, I heard about San Marcos.
Yeah.
And because I think what it was I started meeting people in Antigua, which is at the city. It's like this beautiful city in Guatemala, and like other travelers at hostels and stuff. And then I was seeing them posting stuff from San Marcos. There's all these hippies dancing around fires. And I was kind of like, what's all these crazy hippie parties that everybody's going to? Where is that? And then people are like, oh, you mean San Marcos? You got to get out to San Marcos on the lake, on Lake Atitlan. And I was like, yeah, that's where I'm going. And so then I went out there for a while, and such rich experiences. I kind of had to get away for sometimes. It was almost too much, so I'd go across to what's it called, San
San,
Juan or something.
San Juan or San Pedro. Yeah, there's two different places, a couple places around the lake. Yeah.
Yeah, just for I'd go over there for a night or two just because the vibe is so intense. But that's actually where I came up with the original concept of what I do now. It took me a while. I put on the back burner because I got back into e-commerce for a few years during the pandemic and a little bit after the pandemic. But at the time, I was doing marketing for a dating coach, and I was picking up little freelance jobs here and there. I was doing a website for a therapist, and I kind of forget. But then I started thinking, you know what? What I really love is this like personal transformation space, working with coaches. But I want to. Oh yeah, and I think I'd started becoming obsessed with the books by Russell Brunson, who's a really famous internet marketer.
Yep. Yep.
And I was like, I want to actually not just do marketing for coaches. I want to like become a coach and
Okay.
like teach them these amazing marketing principles that I'm learning, and kind of be start to become a speaker and a content creator. And then at the time I thought I was going to call it Apollo Marketing. And now my brand name is Tribe Builders. Um, but that was kind of it was in San Marcos where the original vision came to me, and then it kind of
Yeah.
was, and then I was thinking, I think I want this to be like a men's thing, like a little bit later.
So
But
share where you at with this. What is it that you now define what you do?
okay, so I help men's transformation coaches build online businesses. And so
Awesome.
I teach them like effective marketing strategies to get clients. Lately, I've been really focusing on helping people kind of become creatively free to express themselves, to create content, stuff like that. That's kind of been my focus the last few weeks, kind of. And it all started in San Marcos because it's such a rich community of coaches, teachers, and healers.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been meaning to get back down there.
Beautiful, brother.
Sometimes
Well, when
I'll.
you do, you have a men's coach you can hang out with, and we can, yeah, go on some adventures. And yeah, man, thank you for doing that work because, I've been building my business over the last few years, and I've read all the books as well. And I've been pretty much on a solo journey until probably the last 5 years, where I've really invested heavily in coaches to
Mm,
really just fucking hold me to account, make sure I'm doing the right things, the things that matter, measuring the things that
mhm.
matter most. And yeah, but it's not an easy path if you don't know exactly where to go. And there's a lot of information out there. And the challenge with
Oh
not
yeah,
having somebody that has one plan is you go onto the internet and you end up taking two or three different approaches and trying to blend them together, and then your marketing message is not clean. And with all the best
hmm,
intentions of wanting to serve the world as a men's coach or a healer of whatever, if you can't pay the bills, you're not an effective coach. That's how it works. And so you
I
have to
like
get all of
that.
these pieces right in order for it to line up. And so it doesn't help being a poor coach. You can't share your gift. And so yeah, thank you
I love
for doing
that.
this work, brother.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I feel so fulfilled. And when I first started, I thought, okay, I've got a lot to offer because I'd already been like the director of marketing for an e-commerce business. I'd been a web designer at Playboy for 3 years. I was doing marketing for the dating coach. I was like, I'm a professional at this stuff. I'm an expert at this stuff. And then when I actually became a coach myself and I was like, okay, I'm going to go get clients and create content, I was like, okay, I've actually got a lot to learn.
Hmm.
And um, one, so my mom was in labor with me for 16 hours. Like, I didn't get my driver's license till I was 23. Like, even though I have this gift for taking these big leaps of faith that pay off, sometimes
Whoa, whoa,
I'm
whoa. How, your mom was in labor with you for 16 hours. You didn't get your driver's license till you were 23. How did those two link together?
so my point is that I was about to say it. My point is that even though I have this gift and this ability to take big leaps of faith, or but also transitions in my life are long, slow,
Ah,
painful,
got
and
it.
drawn out.
Got it.
You
I thought
know?
I thought you just dropped that in and had gone onto a different thread.
Yeah. Hopefully, I was just about to make it all make sense.
Sorry, my
Which
bad.
is
Eh?
that was my point. Is that like um, because that was a big change for me, right? To commit to having my own business as opposed to kind of working for clients or stuff like that. To really, and I had some blockages with that, and I realized I had so much to learn, and I kind of struggled in the beginning. And so the dating coach that I did marketing for, he already had uh, an email list of like 30,000 people.
Okay.
He'd already been in business for like 20 years or something. So
Okay.
it's different starting from scratch. And so I went through a lot of spinning my wheels, despite the fact that I'd already had a have a degree in new media and worked in the corporate world in marketing for a long time. And despite that, it was still really challenging. And so for people that feel the calling to be a coach or a facilitator or whatever and serve others and go all in on their passion, it's really hard to figure it out on your own. Some
Yeah.
people seem to do it with a lot more grace than other people, but to do it with a mentor or in a group of other people that are kind of walking the same path and ideally all of that, I think
Yeah.
is absolutely invaluable. And so that's what my work is about, is being that and providing that to people. And I absolutely love it. And I feel like I'm just getting started, being at it for about a year and a half. In the beginning, though, I was still involved in e-commerce, and I was just kind of doing this as a hobby, almost like starting to record videos and put them on YouTube and kind of testing the waters. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, the rug was pulled out from under my feet, and then I was kind of all in on this. And there was kind of a period of um, difficult times and before I kind of got my bearings, and now it's going really great, and it's just it's so amazing to be living this life, you know. So
Brother, thank you so much
yeah.
for doing this work. I mean, it's so necessary. Men's work is, I believe, men's work is today where meditation was in the West 20 or 30 years ago. I think every
Mm,
tech CEO that's worth their weight an established leader in Silicon Valley has a meditation practice, and
yeah.
it's pretty commonplace now that this is an important part of the journey. And so, spaces where men can come together and speak authentically what's alive for them, week after week, as a men's circle or a group of men coming together. I actually see it as part of my own personal hygiene practice, meaning I need to go to a space where we have a secure container where I can speak about what's alive in my world, to be able to bring it out, because a lot of the stuff spins in your head. And if you don't take the time to speak it out, you don't get the reflection of the men that you trust around you, and you end up holding it all yourself. You also don't receive the reflection of the other men who share their own journeys and struggles and challenges. And I'm sure you've come across the men's work saying, which is, my work is your work, meaning when we're in a circle, when you stand up and talk about your money story or getting stuck in McDonald's, and you're like, suddenly I'm like, oh, fuck, I've had one of those things. And so when you share something and do the work, not only is it transformational for you as the person sharing, because it feels like you're putting down all of this weight and feeling more light and liberated and in many ways healed and integrated as a function of just sharing it and being witnessed in a non-judgmental way from men, but also the other men that are receiving it are holding the space for you. But it's medicine for me as well to hear you say that, because I'm like, I'm not the only dude who went through a midlife crisis in my 30s and was looping in my own stories of not enough or whatever that was. And so, yeah, I really see this technology as coming out into the world and being more and more accessible. And so, yeah, the work that you're doing is hugely important, and I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hold the space, because this is, yeah, it's coming. It's a big wave, and the analogy I have with my team is it's like this wave is coming, whether we're part of it or not. You're seeing it in your work, I no doubt. Men are like,
Yeah.
they heal, they get the feeling, they see an opportunity, there's a potential to do it. We need more soldiers in this army, and so yeah, bring more integrated men to the world, men that feel okay with themselves, men that love themselves more, and this is a way to be able to do it. Even though we spend time in men only spaces, it has nothing to do with just being men only. It's so that I can come out and be in a world as a better lover, as a better leader, for some men, as a better parent or a better husband. Like, those pieces are the reason that you go into the men's work circle. That's the reason you sit on your meditation cushion every day. It's so that you can come
Hmm.
more clearly to the things that matter in your life. And so this analogy is that this wave is coming, and my work at the moment is to get our team set up and ready so that we're paddling solidly onto this wave. And when it comes, that we're standing on the wave as it starts to cruise, because it's coming and I can feel it. And I just, there's a version of
Wow.
me from the past, which is, oh no, here's another men's work coach. Fuck, maybe I should do something else. This is too much, or, we don't need another blah, blah, blah. And now I'm like, moved away from that space of being like in competition with other men and having a conversation with you, who is, in inverted commas, my direct competition. I have a program called Ignition that I'm running right now that helps men
No
and
way.
women, supporting them
I'm
to bring their magic. What's
I'm
that?
calling I the next thing I'm adding to the course component of my system is I'm calling it ignition.
Well, bro, and
So,
then my men's membership is called Tribe. We've actually called it Tribe for
oh,
the same
okay.
reason. And you have
Yeah.
a business that's called Tribe Builders. That's your brand. I
Yeah.
think that these ideas come through the collective at a specific
Yeah.
time, and people
Yeah.
take the magic and run with it. So the idea of men's work and tribes and training and ignition and these words tend to be like a part of the collective story, and run with it, flow with the idea if you feel the call, and don't be upset or disappointed if other people have similar names or similar brands. Just
Yeah.
get in the wave, and I can help, because that's what it feels like for
Yeah.
me, being in service. And so, yeah, brother, I just wanted
Yeah.
to say thank you for
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
this work, and for, yeah, making those hard choices that have got you to this life path that you're on of being in service. And yeah, just been
Yeah.
excellent hanging out with you today. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Some of the things you said are just really sticking with me, and um, I really appreciate
Can you share one?
you. Um, you said something like, "How did you put it? You can't be. There's no good. It's no good being a broke coach."
Oh yes, yeah.
I was like, "That's so. It's so simple, but it's like it's yeah." And there's much more, but that's
Thank
the
you. No,
one
that's what I wanted
that's
to hear.
right
Thank you.
right at hand. Yeah, and then it made me feel so good when you were like acknowledging the work I'm doing, and it made me realize that I never had to compromise between, do I want to be an entrepreneur and build wealth, or do I want to be um, in service to humanity and do something that's creatively fulfilling? Because what I'm doing now is full on with both of these things. Like, the sky's the limit with both, and so
Right.
it's so beautiful. And then also the competition thing. Like, so I've got a Facebook group, and sometimes business coaches will join, and I'll be like, oh, I better not let them in there. They might poach my leads.
Hmm.
And sometimes the really kind of cookie cutter business coaches, I kind of don't let in. It's pretty rare, but what I like is people that are so, it's so like they've made such a like a personal thing that they're so unique, and yes, they're helping entrepreneurs grow their businesses, but it's so their own thing that they're not really competitors. And that's what I'm aspiring to be with what I do. Like, I don't want to be just the 1 millionth person being like, I'm going to help you scale to $10,000 a month using my patented system, my tri builder method system. Like, I
Hmm.
want it to be like, it's so such a unique thing, but still very effective. Like, not eccentric, not compromising the ability to get results for people, but to the point where it's like there is no competition because um, we're doing our own thing to such an extent that it's like maybe we help people get some of the similar results, but it's so different because I'm me,
Hmm.
you're you. Some of the other guys that we probably both know, they're kind of helping people grow businesses, helping other coaches and stuff, but I don't really even see them as competition because and I'm actually curious about their material. Like, I'd like to sign up for some of their stuff and see, and I'm sure it's like just so different than what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, it's that big wave. We're on the top of this big wave, and we can argue about which drop we're going to fight over, or you can fucking paddle out and make sure that you're standing and ready when the wave starts to break. And the best way to do that, from what I can see, is to focus on the things that are uniquely mine to do, and noticing what those are and showing up for those is mine to do. And I notice I do this myself. Like anytime I'm like, oh, what is he doing? I'm in some ways there's something about going out to learn and keeping an eye on the market, but in many
hmm
ways, I'm like, dude, just stay in your lane. Just, you know what you need to do. You've got your stuff. I've got my own programs. I've got my stuff. Just keep doing it. And in fact, see if you can co create, see if we can leverage together, see if we can have a podcast with
yeah,
this guy, because there'll be magic for both of us in articulating this. I get to hear what you're doing. You get to hear what I'm doing. And each of our individual offerings to our own unique tribe and to the collective is better because we had this conversation and got to share some of the stuff that you've blown my mind with today and some of the stuff that I've said that's resonated with you. Both of us are better for having spent this time together, where in the past I would have been like, oh fuck, here's another men's coach. you know and so, yeah, just
okay,
really
yeah,
leaning into the collaboration rather than competition is a core
yeah,
principle of at Fathers, Sons, Brothers, is to yeah, recognize that we don't have to compete with one another. That's an old model of immature
yep,
masculinity. The mature
yep,
masculine is like, we're all fucking kings. There's work to be done in
hmm
the world. We spoke about the planet and the state of politics and all the stuff that needs to be fixed. How do we work together and build strong networks of men that are showing up, doing the work, so that they can be better fathers, brothers, husbands, lovers, leaders? And how do we support them to do that? While at the same time recognizing I've still got my own work to do. My men's circle is a massive growth opportunity for my personal development because I'm surrounded by men that I want to spend my time with. Fuck, thank you. That's the biggest gift in the world. And I get to realize my own shadows and my own traumas and my own stuff coming up, being in service to these other men. And it's called me to being a better person. So, yeah, bro, it's a collaboration, and I'm really just getting to that place of, yes, there's healthy competition. I'm interested to know how much people are making, and I have my own goals and stuff. But I don't feel us competing, and I don't feel like there's not enough for all of us, because we came back to it. We've both been to this place of realizing we don't need so much to live. It's
hmm
more about making an impact and supporting in a way that I can, where I've been in service. That feels more important to me. And then I trust that the money will come.
yeah, absolutely. Collaboration, abundance,
Mm,
making what we're doing so us that there's nothing else out there like it. Or if it is the same as other stuff, that's great too, because like you're saying, we're all tapping into the same ball of light, and it's all good that we're both using the word tribe and ignition, and
yeah,
it's all good
absolutely.
because your version of tribe and ignition is different than my version of tribe and ignition, and you've got your people and I've got my people, and like, let's say I've got a client who they're paying me to work with me, and then they go to some other coach, and then I lose that. Well, that's okay because clients our good clients want to work with different people.
Hmm.
Like not, I think it's good to kind of work with one person as opposed to, but basically it's not like they're our client forever and nobody else can have them, and
It's the
they're
same
only
as a
ever going to
normal
pay for.
relationship. Yeah, like if you have a girlfriend and you're like,
Yeah.
"This is mine forever," it starts to get a bit creepy, you know. You're hopefully here because you want to be here and we're getting value from this. But if you choose to leave at some point, then I send you away with love, whatever that works out. Yeah, I agree with that
Yeah,
thinking. Yeah,
yeah. The really good clients are willing to invest and learn here and then learn there, and we all have different things to offer, and it's all good. Yeah.
beautiful, brother. Where can somebody connect with you if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
So they can find me on Facebook at Justin Dale, or Instagram at I am Justin Dale. All no underscores or anything like that. And I do have a website, tribuilder.net, as well.
Awesome.
So yeah, and I'd
We've
love
got
to
those
hear from
details. We'll
anybody.
put them straight in the show notes. So anybody that wants to connect with you can, yeah, can connect with you on socials or check out Tribe Builders.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for a great conversation.
Yeah, it's been amazing, brother. Yeah, and thank you for the work you're doing. I'm part of your Facebook group, and yeah, I'm keeping an eye on what's happening there. And this is where this conversation came out from. You were talking about podcasting, and yeah,
Yeah,
you also invited me to something recently, which I didn't have capacity for. But yeah, our vortexes have been sort of overlapping, and this conversation
they
feels
sure
like a great
have.
chance for us to bring it together. So thanks for making the time, brother.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I'm gonna take you up on that offer to hang out in Guatemala. It's just a matter of time before I'm down there again.
Sweet, epic, my
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
Appreciate you, brother. Much love. Thanks for coming on the
Much
show.
love. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks everybody for checking out this episode. If you are interested in journeying more with Justin, make sure that you check out his links in the show notes. For those of you who are here for the first time, make sure you check out the King Circle. This is our free online men's circle that takes place on the last Sunday of every single month. Details for that will also be in the show notes, and we'll see you on the next episode.